It was the 22nd year of Sejong's reign. A man in a robe stands near a magical sphere, in which there is a little boy. Someone asked the man if his name really was Kim Sisite. He bears such a burden despite the fact that he is still very small. The unknown person behind the man in the robe said that this was his fate, and he could only accept it. The unknown person added that he would not be able to free himself from the shackles of this life. The man in the robe felt very sorry for the boy and girl standing behind him. Attention shifts to the little girl standing with the unknown. After which we are shown a flying woman in a dress, in the middle of the night. Someone's hand reached out to her to ask about her name. An old man and a young frightened woman wake up son-in-law. The son-in-law woke up abruptly and screamed when he unexpectedly saw his father-in-law. The boy asked his wife why she didn't wake him up earlier. The old man asked the boy if he still knew the name of the girl he sees in his dreams. The boy replied that apparently she does not have a name, and this is just an ordinary dream. The old man pulled out a sword, which caused the boy to become terrified. The boy, under the supervision of an old man, calmed his wife down and gave her a massage, saying that this was just a girl from a dream, this was a hallucination, and she was not comparable to her. The wife, with tears in her eyes, said that this was her husband's daily dream, and the husband replied that if he knew how to control dreams, he would only see her in them, his wife, every day. The wife cried and screamed that she had lost to hallucinations from a dream. The evil father-in-law attacked the husband with a sword, and reminded him that if he made his daughter cry, he would bleed him. Meanwhile, someone was sweeping the open-air yards. The events took place in the fortified city of Hanyang. This is the first year of Moon Zhang's reign. The guy in the headband asks the man in the hat if he was cursed as a child, to which the man replies that it's all because he's not good enough. The guy in the bandage replied that he was not good enough, but overdone, and every night he dreams of another girl, not his wife, so their marriage is in danger. The man in the hat said that if he knew the true face of the girl, who appears in his dreams, he would feel relieved. He also added that that is why he believed the guy in the bandage and came here to find the draftsman. The guy in the headband said that according to legend, this draftsman could draw that girl as if she were alive, if he just told the draftsman about her. The guy in the headband was holding something, and the man in the hat asked what he had in his hands. Opening the package, he showed an example of the draftsman's work, to which the guy in the hat was surprised at the girl's beauty. The guy in the bandage asked if this was surprising, to which the man replied that this action was indecent on his part. He added that he heard a scary story that some people desire a girl who does not exist in the world, and someone even went blind because of the picture. Turning his head, the man in the hat asked that he bought the painting, even if he had heard that. The man in the hat put his hand on the shoulder of the guy in the bandage and took a deep breath. He also suggested they go inside. While they were there, the door swung open, and a huge man with long hair stood in front of them. The guy in the headband and the man in the hat were scared from surprise. The man with long hair told them to give them half of the tissue, and to come in one at a time, to which the man with the hat agreed. The man in the hat asked the guy in the headband to wait for him here. A man in a hat walked inside the building, and asked why it was so dark. The man opened the door slightly and apologized for the intrusion. He saw that someone's hand with a brush was near the candle. The man in the hat entered the room, and apologized again. In front of him he saw a guy with white hair, and a blindfold drawing something. He wondered to himself if a blind man could draw pictures. The blind draftsman was indignant that a nobleman came to him in such a place inappropriate for a nobleman. The blind draftsman told the nobleman to clear a place for himself, and sit down, and the nobleman said that he had heard that he was quick-witted. The eyes on the blind draftsman's bandage began to move, and looked down. The nobleman leaned back a little and asked himself what it could be. The blind draftsman began to say that the world is not all that he sees, and this is not what he should say. Having started to draw, he continued that his job is to draw so that people can see it. The nobleman asked if this was not too dark a place to paint pictures, and added that a fire should be lit. The draftsman asked the nobleman if he had heard of Samgyeokdo. The man replied that this is the world of hungry ghosts. The animal world is not what Buddhists talk about, and he learns the words of the sages. The draftsman said that this is not necessarily about Buddhism. He also asked if there were other worlds that we don't know about, and shadows like monsters appeared around the draftsman. The nobleman arrived in horror and shouted at the top of his voice from the fright of what he saw. The drawer continued that in Buddhism there is Trilika, which is divided into 6 more worlds, and this is just a large division that is easy to understand. He also added that if you divide each other into an infinite number of similar worlds, then can they spread in different ways. The frightened nobleman said that he could not even listen to the history of Buddhism, but he was talking about some infinite number of worlds. The draftsman continued that if the nobleman was confused by the word infinity, then, how about calling it the multiverse? The draftsman continued that constantly repeating different universes continuously, either moving away or approaching each other. He said that the planets influence each other, and when influenced, they experience chaotic times, and sometimes intersect. The blind man continued that no matter how many there are, it is just a number and nothing depends on them. Suddenly the draftsman added that if this continues, then perhaps it will all become one. He also suggested that maybe someone from another universe was observing their actions through the painting. The nobleman angrily interrupted the monologue, saying that he had come to get the painting, and not to listen to bizarre stories. The blind guy suddenly said that if this someone is the girl from his dreams. The artist continued his monologue that when different universes intersect, there is a connection that all people encounter, and depicting these connections is a talent. Grimacing and coughing, the draftsman suddenly said that he couldn't do this anymore. He added that everyone who comes to him asks to draw a woman they saw in a dream. He had already foreseen this. He added that the nobleman is doing a good job, and all these are methods of spreading the sale, and he was just trying to create the necessary atmosphere. The nobleman suddenly shouted that the painter was still talking nonsense, and he could order him what to do. Handing over the black bandage, the blind guy said that let him put it on and imagine that it was just a deception, and this would help him clearly see the image of the girl from his dreams. The blind man asked him, with his eyes closed, to describe in detail the image that would appear before him. After the guy was blindfolded, the draftsman asked if he saw anything. Denying the blind man's question, the nobleman in the pitch darkness saw the image of that same girl. He said that she is dressed simply but elegantly, and her appearance is soft and delicate, and her face is covered with a thin veil. He continued that even if you can't see it, she has a beautiful face, and her eyes. She looks like she's about to cry, but she looks like she's made some kind of firm decision, and has a strong will. Seeing some blue glow in the distance, he told him not to come near him. The nobleman screamed, and the frightened draftsman asked if he had seen something else, and should take a closer look, and tell him what it was. Without calming down, the guy shouted that he wouldn't even be able to see it. Some blue dragonfly suddenly changed its route towards the nobleman. The nobleman fell from fright, continuing to scream and tremble with fear. Without wasting time, the blind draftsman tore the black bandage from the nobleman, and said that he had caught the creature. When the nobleman asked what it was, the draftsman replied that thanks to him he had caught a flying insect, which had been irritating the blind man for a long time. The artist also added that he was initially aiming straight for his eyes, but he caught him anyway. The nobleman shouted out that he did not understand such tricks, and would never again tolerate something like this to himself. The draftsman showed a drawing that depicted exactly the same girl. The draftsman also apologized for constantly confusing the nobleman with his behavior, and he did it for a reason, and hopes for understanding. The painter also asked that if in the future he meets this girl, he should save her, because she is an unfortunate child who is sealed in his painting. The nobleman asked what he meant, that he would actually meet that girl, to which the draftsman nodded. The draftsman, leading the nobleman out the door, said that it was not time for him to leave. The guy in the hat wanted to ask something else, but the door slammed. The massive man said that if he was already done with his business, he could leave here. The nobleman asked about the name of the artist, because he might come by later. But suddenly a bright light appeared from the building where they were sitting together. The guards, frightened, ran screaming to Eun-kyung to ask what he had done again. When they opened the door, they found that Eun-kyung was no longer there. The massive men shouted out how he caught him to pay off his debt, and how Eun-kyung disrespected his organization. Suddenly, a massive man attacked the nobleman and began to interrogate that he had come to hide him in the first place. The nobleman replied that he met Eun-kyung for the first time, and it had nothing to do with it. The massive guy continued that how he knew his name, and where he hid it. The nobleman added that they weren't even looking for him, and asked if there was a hole behind this picture, which is behind the two guys. The stupid guys immediately moved towards the painting to tear it down, and find Eun-kyung. Having torn the picture down, they discovered that there was no hole behind it. At the same time, a half-sleepy guy, in a bandage asked why the nobleman took so long. He also, arriving in bewilderment, turned around, and saw how those stupid guys chased the nobleman. A little later, some children were stealing their things by the river together. The girls whispered something to each other, and laughed at something. The guys were sitting under the bridge, and the guard asked, standing above them, and said that he definitely saw the nobleman running to the bridge. The guy also added that if he came across him, he would immediately grind him into powder, just like Eun-kyung. Pevern in a bandage asked what the nobleman had already done, to which he replied that he did nothing, and just took the painting. To prove the presence of the painting, he went to look in his sleeve, but it was not there due to a hole in the sleeve. Meanwhile, those two stupid guys found the painting, and picked it up in bewilderment. Having opened the painting, one of them said that it would not cost a small sum, and was worth selling. Suddenly, someone behind the guys pierced some kind of napkin with an arrow, around which an unknown shadow formed. The guy in the purple robe turned out to be the nobleman's father-in-law, and he said that Eun-kyung had caused problems again. Later in the evening, the father-in-law in a white robe looked at the paintings drawn by Eun-kyung, and muttered to himself. Suddenly, someone's shadow asked behind the wall how long it would take for the father-in-law to. He also added that he is scared to be here, as we find out this is Prince Anpyeong, the third son of King Sejong. Father-in-law said that it was naturally so cold, because this is the place where the cold yin energy flows, from the humpback ridge. He also added that yin and yang flow along it. Suddenly, the father-in-law began to whisper unknown spells, while taking out his sword. Suddenly, an energy ball appeared near the old man, which was emitted from the draftsman's painting. Continuing to cast the spell, someone's clothes began to come out of the picture. At the same moment, the old man looked up, and saw how a huge tree had grown, at which young Anpyeong was very scared. The old man explained to him that she must be reborn again, with a living human body, exactly the same as in the picture. Suddenly the freezing rain started turning into a blue storm. Storm said it shouldn't be this way, and asked him to let her out right now. The old man looked surprised because the storm had a mouth. He also replied that he brings into the world something that cannot be done with magic. The old man continued that the spirit, the Trilika of the six worlds, entered the young master's dream, and this dream was embodied in the painting by Eun-kyung. He also added that the young man Kim Sisayat has a deep connection with the painting. He recreated the image of the girl from his dreams. And the old man exclaimed that he had now brought her back to life in a human body. The prince asked if the old man was putting them in great trouble, and if it was really okay what he was doing. The old man replied that there would be a big disaster, but he hoped that it would not be directed at them. He also added that now the prince should name this child, and bind him to this land. The old man said that if he wrote down the name in blood, he could capture Prince Suyang, his relative and greatest enemy. The prince, looking towards the cloud, saw the same girl, and their eyes met. Later, in the vicinity of the Goyang lands, a hunt took place with a small army. Someone asked the governor if they should start from here. Apyeong grinned to show his positive response. The army moved forward with tambourines to scare away the animals for capture. Apyeong confidently ordered the entire army to advance forward. The hunt seemed big and cruel, successfully hunting all the animals in a row. But at one moment someone's shadow dragged away one of the warriors. Everyone started shouting that it was a tiger, and he ate one of the soldiers. The tiger destroyed the first soldier, and was about to head towards the second. Other warriors on horses began to approach the tiger to help the guy. The tiger attacked one of the riders, standing on two paws, like a man. The tiger bit the horse, and threw off the rider to destroy him. The rider wanted to defend himself, but his katonag fell out, and he lost his last chance. The enraged beast instinctively attacked the defenseless warrior. But suddenly the prince cut the animal without even moving an eye. A little later, the prince washed himself with his horse. The guy in the blue robe asked if the prince planned to have a night stop here. The prince said that if they went inside the city it would be a little depressing. The guy in the blue robe said that a beater nearby told him that there was a house here. He also continued pointing out that if they entered that gorge, they would find a house with a tiled roof. He added that even in such depths of the mountain there are private houses, and he was very surprised to meet a beater here. The guy added that the beater said that a woman lives in that house, and you won't find beauty like hers. He added that not all men are the same, and the beater got scared, and just ran away from there. The guy in blue continued that maybe it was a reincarnated fox, and asked the prince if he wanted to go hunting. A peong replied that let the guy in the bandage tell this beater to stop drinking, and prepare the guide. He also added that they are going to listen to the stories of people living in the outback, but if the guy in blue behaves recklessly, he will kill him. A few years later, they were running through the thickets of the forest, as if they were looking for something. Suddenly the prince stopped to look at something. As it turned out, the path that led them to the right path was blocked. The subordinate said that it had collapsed there, and they would not be able to go further, and asked what to do. Approaching the place, the prince stood at the cliff holding a torch in his hand, and looked somewhere into the distance. The prince told him to wait, and the prince would return in an hour. Having arrived and standing on the cliff, the prince said that every time he looks, the view is still the same magnificent. Suddenly, the prince noticed that in the distance of the forest there was someone's light. The prince decided to go alone to find out what was happening there. As it turns out, the light is the lanterns at the entrance to someone's property. Having opened the doors, the prince saw a lot of tasty and juicy food. The girl's voice said that for such a long journey, let them have a snack first. Over a cup of tea, the prince asked that she serves alcohol with snacks every time, but still doesn't want to open her heart. The girl said that she always said that this was impossible, and the prince should not come to her. The prince said that despite the fact that she refuses every time, he still comes back here. He added that even when he came here for the first time, she somehow found out about it, and set the table, and so every time. He continued that nothing dangerous had happened. The girl said that he still doesn't know who she really is, so he doesn't know fear. The prince said that to be honest, during the day he could not find his way here, at all, and he had to kill many innocent animals while hunting. Opening the sword slightly, he added that the grave of General Choi Young is nearby, and she is the only one who looks after his grave. Throwing away the sword, he said that he didn't even know, maybe he was aiming at a close relative of the king of Joseon. The prince continued that maybe the official Kim Jong-so and the ministers are trying to hide the girl, so that he cannot get closer to his majesty. He added that these are all little things, and they don't matter, and now he doesn't care, because he's ready to give up everything to get a girl. He continued, holding his sword, that if he had to lock himself in here, and give up everything to live with her, he would do it. He added that at some point he felt the energy of a presence around this house, and said that it would prevent him from coming to her. He added that he would cut him into pieces, and even if it was the lover she was hiding, he would not hesitate to kill him. The girl took the prince's hand, and lowered his valuable sword. The girl carefully began to bandage the prince's hand. He was glad that she finally took his hand. The girl silently continued to bandage Afyin's hand. Suddenly, fire began to smoke from the drops of blood that fell from Apyeong's hand. The girl looked to the side, and discovered that a fire had begun to form around the prince. Red smoke suddenly began to grow, and grow towards the sky. Suddenly some red ray broke through to the sun at high speed. And in the forest some red ring of seals was sorted. Meanwhile, inside the Gyeongbokgung palace, the official's frightened servants greeted him. This is the first state councillor Kim Jong-se. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-so stood at some door in the room. The official took out some card from under his sleeve. Kim Jong-so threw it at the door, and it suddenly began to shock him. The door turned gray and the official extended his hand to it to enter the door. Inside there was a corridor consisting only of stones that looked like teeth. Walking further, the old man went down the same gray staircase. The stairs led him to a black portal, above which the official stared. With a light touch of Kim Jong-se's hand, the portal turned blue. Kim Jong-so, without thinking, calmly entered the blue portal. Coming out of it, someone told him that he was late, and it was already late, to which he replied that he had business. The official saw people meditating in front of him, sitting on mats. Someone joined them and said that Suyan's work was going smoothly, and yesterday he went to Okium again. He also added that at this rate, almost the entire life of Prince Suyang will be drawn into another, and only a shell will remain of him. Someone else in a red coat said it was a shame it was taking so long. One of them said that the prince, in fact, has now lost interest in politics, and is completely fascinated. Kim Jong-so said that they should be prepared to go to extremes so that unexpected situations do not happen. Someone asked what they should do and someone added what he meant. The man in the red robe said that he was interfering with his power in the struggle for secular power. The guy in the blue robe said that this is all to protect King Daejeon, who gathered them to Sinmuwi. Kim Jong-so said that once this is over, they will no longer use these insidious forces, and that he takes full responsibility upon himself. There was deathly silence, and everyone in the hall was quietly meditating. Suddenly, someone started laughing, repeating that it was very funny. Someone started that he is young now, and he doesn't understand that now they are plotting to harm Bang, one's own blood. The unknown person continued that since he personally assisted in helping, he remembers that Bang One did not want his bloodline to be protected. He also added that if they got on his nerves, he would have captured and killed his relatives himself. Kim Jong-so stood up and shouted to the elder that enough was enough. 4. He continued that, as always, he will help in everything important, regardless of the consequences. The official jumped up angrily and left the portal saying that they would meet in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Kim Sisipe in a headband trained with a stick. The bald boy told the scientist that the lower part should be pressed firmly to the ground. Kim Sisipe tried to do what the bald boy told him. After the fall, Sisipe said that he couldn't do it anymore, to which the coach replied that if he had gone to war, he would have died instantly. He continued that his lower body is frail, but if he climbs to the Buddhist temple 108 times daily, it will help him. Sisipe replied that it would be difficult, and even if he couldn't do it, he would at least train at the temple. The little guy's trainer said he's been slacking off too much, and he has to go up and down those stairs 100 times a day. He continued that the guy is having inappropriate dreams because he is being cunning and neglecting his training. To which Sisipe got angry and began to shout insulting the coach, to which the monk replied that it seemed that he was offended by the words, that he was a weakling. The guy continued shouting that where did he learn to behave like that in front of adults. Sisipe tried to hit the boy, but the monk dodged without even straining. The monk replied that he was careless. It was nonsense that the guy was talking. The guy chased the bald man, saying that he doesn't know how to treat elders. Meanwhile, a senior monk in a red robe appeared. Sisipe stopped and began to say that he was tired of running, and he lost. He also added that a monk could eat it as a sign of his defeat. The monk took the sweet without thinking, and thanked Sisipe for his generosity. Having deceived the monk, Sisipe began to tease him and rub his bald head with his fist. Suddenly, in the middle of their games, the senior monk could not stand it and showed his presence. The senior monk said that the junior monk should not be lazy and sweep the temple gates so that not a single fallen leaf is visible. The younger monk immediately listened to him and ran to sweep the temple gates. Sonak continued that today a noble man unexpectedly came to visit them, so it would be nice if the guy dressed normally. Sisaipe asked that the duty of Buddhism is not to renounce earthly relationships and empty formalities. The old man said that he was far from the mortal world and didn't know well, but he heard that it was the prince himself. Sisaipe replied that the prince was simply using his power and did not think that he would like to meet with this man at such times. The old man replied that the monk was not smart in worldly affairs, since he was stuck here deep in the mountains, but the scientist came here to make a career. The old man said that being deep in the mountains, if he met an influential person and made an acquaintance, wouldn't it be useful? He also added that such an opportunity does not come along often, so let the guy think about it and take the chance. The old man said that the guest will arrive soon, so let the scientist put on a suit. A little later, Sisaipe prepared his suit and sat down in front of it, thinking about something. He also asked himself if he could take the right path. Sisaipe continued that no matter how hard he tried, dreams about a woman did not stop, and due to lack of sleep, he studied poorly. He added that his wife couldn't stand it and left because of his dreams. He also asked himself why these dreams torment him every day, and why he feels her every time he falls asleep. The guy continued that he eventually went to study at a Buddhist temple, so as not to disturb his father anymore. He added that suddenly, with the help of the Buddha, he could get rid of these dreams. Sisaipe said that however this decision was useless. The guy continued that his heart was only filled with a deep sense of emotion when thinking about a woman he had never seen. Resolutely he said that he could waste no more time. Meanwhile, the temple participants greeted the prince at the entrance. The prince replied that the path was more difficult than he expected. The monk replied that Prince Apyeong had been through a lot. Apyeong covered himself in the evening and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. Sisaipe looked around in confusion and asked where the prince was now. He noticed a crowd where everyone was crowded around Prince Apyeong. Trying to squeeze through, Sisaipe apologized and asked to be let through. The Sispa was pushed out and told to keep the line normally. He stood up and looked at the crowd with a contemptuous look. He turned around and walked away from the bunch of fake smiles that crowded around the prince. A little later, Sisaipe washed his face at a small waterfall in nature. Sisaipe said that he does not want to bend his back from birth. He also added that white clouds and blue mountains roam freely. Meanwhile, someone shouted rise to the sleeping monk. To which he asked what he was doing in the yard, and he added that they understood everything wrong. The scientist laughed and asked that he didn't feel like studying today, and offered to train his legs and back together. He also continued that no one cared whether he read the chronicles or twirled a stick in his hands, to which the monk was glad that he understood the truth. Suddenly someone asked him that then he could stop studying literacy and take the civil servant exam. Turning around, Sisaipe noticed Prince Apyeong standing with a fan. Sisaipe noticed Apyeong and replied that Kim Sisaipe greeted Prince Apyeong. The monk and Sisaipe bowed to the prince and repeated that they welcomed him. The prince asked that contrary to expectations, how could they know? The prince asked Kim Sisaipe how he could know that he was Apyeong, and added if they had met somewhere. Kim Sisaipe answered in confusion that only by hearsay, and he had already heard about his grace countless times. Apyeong responded wittily as expected, and ordered the boys to raise their heads. The prince added that in fact, they had already met. Apyeong continued that even back then, Kim Sisaipe was very witty, and his father Sejong invited Sisaipe to the palace, because he was a gifted child. He continued that his father gave him 50 units of silk as a reward. He was still thinking how Sisaipe would carry it. Apyeong continued that Sisaipe, as a 5-year-old boy, tied a cloth around his belt and dragged everything behind him. Kim Sisaipe replied that he was too young and already doesn't remember well about it, to which Apyeong asked if his good memory had disappeared with age. The prince said that when he was choosing incense to remember his ancestors, The senior monk told him that a gifted scientist lived here. A peon also continued that he came to see if he was still so smart, and wanted to share his poems. Kim Sisip replied that he would not be able to live up to the prince's expectations. He grew up stupid. A peon replied that his inability to write and compose poetry does not mean that his wisdom has dried up. He also asked if they could see this energy by pointing to the sky. In front of them was a landscape consisting of a sunset and some kind of gradient in the distance. Kim Sisip replied that if he is talking about a blurry 5-color haze, then it will rain today. A peon asked if Sisip could see it, and the monk said that it is called a mountain that rises surrounded by white clouds. Prince Apiong said that only Sisip and he can see this, and if there is a talent that others do not have, it can be called wisdom. Sisip asked himself if they were the only ones who could see this. Prince Apiong replied that even if he can vaguely see the boundaries of Trilok and the 6 worlds, then this is a very rare talent. Kim Sisip immediately remembered the words of the draftsman about Triloka and the 6 worlds. He asked what this could mean, and the monk replied that it was just a mountain. The prince thoughtfully wanted to explain to him. Apiong said that it was a haze or just dust, and added that it could be the breath of a living creature. Kim Sisip said that this is the firstborn in free wandering. The blue color of the sky is its original color, so it is infinitely far away. Apiong replied that the wisdom of learning to read and write has not yet completely disappeared, and added that if this is the breath of a living being, then how big is it? Kim Sisip said that every time he sees something like this, it starts to rain after a while, and perhaps it is a dragon. Apiong replied that this was an interesting idea, and told the monk that he might not sweep today, because at night the dragon would bring rain. Apiong handed some kind of bag to Sisip, and told him to take it. Apiong gave Kim Sisip an incense bag, and added that having fragrance is also a virtue of a scholar. Apiong said that he should take it. It is a necessary thing for people like them, to which Kim Sisip replied, how could he accept something so valuable? The prince continued that this scent was created to ward off evil creatures, and suddenly Sisip could not sleep due to some strange dreams. He also added that he should keep it as a badge until he called upon it later. Apiong continued that when those who think they are dragons are rampaging, people are needed to help the true dragon ascend. Kim Sisip asked the prince, then who is the true dragon? Apiong replied to be calm, it's not him, and the one who has already taken off is the only son from the previous king. He added that he was worried that among the 9 sons of the dragon there was a cruel elder brother, Taot, of Prince Suyang. Taot is one of the 9 sons of the dragon. He has a ruthless and ferocious temperament, and is constantly hungry. Meanwhile, heavy rain began to wash away everything on the street. But in the warm house, the old man said that he used all methods in order to open a trap for his elder brother, Suyang. Apiong replied that he was worried about this speeding up of events, and asked why don't they slow down now. The old man replied that the guy should pull himself together, because they could not afford any more delays. He continued that the king is still young, and his mother has passed away, which is why they are in such a difficult situation. He added that the guy's fate is like a candle fire in the wind, so it is necessary to eliminate the danger as soon as possible. Suddenly, in the middle of the rain, strong lightning struck. Meanwhile, Kim Sisip was looking at the bag that Apiong gave him. He also recalled the words of the elder, that it would be useful for Kim Sisip to meet with Apiong. But suddenly something caught Kim Sisip's attention, and he looked towards the doors. Lightning struck, and he saw someone's silhouette standing at the door. The scientist was asked if he was sleeping, to which Sisip asked what happened, and asked to come in. The monk, opening the door slightly, apologized for the late visit. The monk admitted that he had something to say to Kim Sisip. He continued that tomorrow is the day he will meet his mother. Kim Sisip replied that it turns out his mother lives in the mortal world, to which the monk replied that yes. The monk continued that after his father died, his mother sent him to a Buddhist temple due to money problems. He also added that even if he broke off contact with the outside world, he still wants to show his mother that he lives well. The monk said that the thing that Prince Upyorn gave to Kim Sisayip smelled very good. The monk asked if Kim Sisayip could lend him a little of it, and if he slept with it, then this sweet aroma would remain. Kim Sisayip replied that the monk extended his hand, opening the bag. He also asked if soaking in this incense would be enough to meet his mother. The monk thanked the scientist, and Kim Sisayip replied that if he is grateful, then he should not be careless about his dreams. Before going to bed, Kim Sisayip said, again, that he smells very nice. A little later, Kim Sisayip was already lying down, and turned his head. Sisayip said that the smell is indeed very pleasant. Meanwhile, Prince Upyong stood in the rainy forest with a katana. Suddenly, Upyorn opened his sword and rushed towards something. When swinging a sword around the blow there was a trace of a black stripe. Suddenly, a black cloud created by Upyorn began to form. Upyorn thought to himself, what kind of treachery is going on? Swinging again the cloud only began to get bigger, and bigger. Suddenly something caught Upyorn's attention, after the blow. A black cloud quickly rushed towards the temple. The prince immediately thought about Okneum, and was afraid for her. Suddenly Kim Sisayip found himself in complete darkness, and was very scared. He sighed with relief, and said that this dream had come again. Turning back, he said that, as always, the same girl appeared. Looking at her, he said that the incense bag was completely ineffective. Okneum turned around, and told him to go back, because he shouldn't be here right now. Kim Sisayip replied that this was very strange, because this had never happened before. Okneum covered her nose, and asked what that strange smell was. Kim Sisayip took out the bag, and asked if she smelled this smell. The girl asked who this bag was from and who gave it to him. Okneum suddenly tried to touch the bag to take it away. Suddenly, a blue glow made the girl push away. Suddenly, some kind of portal opened, where the night was visible, and the girl said that they had fallen into a trap. And she added that those who come here will also be caught. The red moon has become foggy in the middle of a bright night, in the forest. Upyorn asked what the insidious creature was doing here, and let it reveal its identity. A huge rat with thin bones that protruded from its skin looked at the guy. The creature attacked Upyorn, but then managed to deviate, losing his hat. Okneum said she didn't think magic was as strong as she thought. Okneum added that if she stayed here all night, she would somehow dissolve, to which Kim Sisayip said that it was definitely all a dream. The girl continued that she asks to forgive her, that due to lack of time she cannot explain everything in detail. Okneum said that the incense from the bag is used as a conduit for performing spells. She also added that because of this incense, the road of dreams, and the road of reality, which initially could not cross, eventually crossed. She also said that if there was someone from reality here, he would not see him as a person, and would try to kill him. Kim Sisayip asked, what if they are now in a dream, but if reality and dream intersect, then can a person from reality kill him in a dream? Okneum said that everything is true, and they must survive, tonight, and get out of the magic trap. Kim Sisayip also asked if he constantly saw her in his dreams, because of magic. The girl nervously said that a deep connection can also be called magic. Someone suddenly shouted out a request for help in the depths of the forest. Kim Sisayip said that he knew this voice, and the girl added that Kim did not come along the road of sleep alone. The black cloud in the middle of the forest began to grow more and more. Sisayip and Okneum ran together, at the cry, and saw something in front of them. It was a huge monster similar to a huge man with 6 arms, which seriously injured the monk. The monk prays for help from Sisayip, so that the scientist will help him. The guy ran without thinking, and the girl screamed at the scientist not to do this. Meanwhile, Upyorn finished off that rat-like creature, and ordered it to shut up. Hitting again, he finally silenced the creature, and sighed with relief. Suddenly, the wind rushed near the prince, and apparently he was rushing straight towards him. Part of a girl's body, and someone's head appeared from these clouds, and Upyorn said that a whole bunch of creatures flew here. Noticing that it was Okneum, the prince called out to her in a fit of rage. Apyeong took the sword out of the creature, and said that he would have to kill every last one of them. Kim Sisipe dodged the demon's sword with his speed. Standing in front of the creature, he said that he would soon come to the monk. Sisipe sharply rushed into a new attack, on the six-armed demon. The demon, laughing, swung his sword again to attack Sisipe. The demon inserted his sword into the ground again, unsuccessfully attacking Sisipe. Suddenly he ducked from another demon's sword attack. But this time the sword was already in Sisipe's face, and the blow was heading towards him. Okneum cried out in fear. The scientist was worried about him. As it turned out, it hit his face, but not critically enough. Kim Sisipe said that he has many blades, and cannot get closer. Okneum shouted to him that there is only one real sword here, and the rest are a distortion between dreams and reality. Kim Sisipe said that even if this is an illusion, he is still scared. But having understood the words, Okneum confirmed that this is a distortion, and he begins to see a real sword. Unexpectedly, Sisipe took the bag in his hands, and smelled its sweet aroma. He ran towards the demon, and said that he only decides what this creature will look like. Kim Sisipe opened the bag, and poured it onto the creature. Meanwhile, the prince split the face in the cloud in half with a sword. But the cloud flew up and Apyeong's attack was unsuccessful. When suddenly, the face began to shoot at him with something similar to white rain. The cloud began to resemble a white dragon with large wings. Apyeong shouted for the monster to come down, and showed himself. Suddenly, someone's red silhouette began to crawl out of the dragon's body. It was an image of Okneum in a cloud, and she asked the prince for help. Prince Apyeong became extremely furious at what he saw, and began to scream. Screaming, Apyeong formed a circle of fire on the ground around him. Suddenly, some black cloud shot straight into the sky. Even animals began to run away from such a sound in panic. Like Kim Sisipe, holding a monk on his back, ran away with Okneum. The girl said that now she needs to run and hide somewhere until dawn, to which Kim replied that she would like to. Suddenly, they turned around at someone's scream, which they heard from behind. Suddenly a tree broke and something started running from that direction. A demon with a burnt-out face began to head towards them, breaking everything in its path. The demon began to break down its old fragments, finally turning into a mad demon. From what was happening, they covered their ears from the terrible and disgusting scream. Kim Sisipe looked at the creature, and saw in it a crazy lava demon. The girl told them to hurry up, but Kim Sisipe stopped. Kim Sisipe put the monk down, and said that even though they look different, does that mean that they are the same as him? Okneum said that he cannot do this, and what he sees sometimes may turn out to be reality, but Sisipe said that there is no other choice. He also turned around, and told her to take the boy, and run. He also, looking straight at the angry demon, said that he would soon catch up with them. The enraged demon again tried to attack Sisipe, but with his own scream. Sisipe, standing in a defensive position, held back all the wind that the demon created. He moved forward sharply and remembered the words of the old sage, that you can know things by studying them. He added that if you carefully consider the subject, you can reach a logical conclusion. Kim Sisipe shouted for this creature to remember that his name is Kim Sisipe. Suddenly the demon stopped in front of Kim Sisipe, without trying to attack. Sisipe continued to ask that if it understands him, then can it say its name. Unexpectedly, Apyeong stopped, and looked at each other with the monster. The creature, standing peacefully, shouted something towards Apyeong. Apyeong was surprised to hear something that sounded like a human voice. Someone's shadow inside the monster was trying to tell Apyeong something. Apyeong told the creature that if he was human, then let him show his true appearance. The monster, screaming, began to turn into someone, melting its face. The clouds began to disperse, and someone dressed in a robe revealed his appearance. Apyeong was shocked by what he saw, and dropped his katana from his hands. His father appeared in front of him, looking straight at Apyeong. His brother appeared behind him, and his brother asked Apion how he was doing. The brother also added that Apiorn is as full of energy as before. As Apiorn began to cry, he replied that he always wanted to see them again, even if only in his dreams. They told him that they were sorry for the fact that they both left this world, leaving Apiorn alone. The father turned and thanked someone for always sincerely looking after this child. Apion asked why His Highness is here, and why His Highness is in such a place. Suddenly, father and brother disappeared, leaving only Apion and His Highness alone. Waving his head, he began to look for his brother and father. Taking the katana, Apion said that this is a strange and very dangerous place for His Highness, and asked to get out of here together. Your Highness was afraid of Apion and his outstretched hand towards him. Someone suddenly shouted to Apion that he was treacherous. Everything began to be swallowed up in darkness, and Apion wondered if it was Suyang. They continued that he was treacherous and he was plotting against the king, and how dare he be called his uncle. In bewilderment around the crowd, Apion began to deny everything by saying the word no. In a rage, Apion said no again, and rushed to attack them all. Apion, cutting one by one, said that they had no right to judge him. He also added that there has always been a good relationship between him and His Highness. His Highness was very scared, and began to tremble when he saw Apion covered in blood. His Highness began to shout for the monster not to come near him. Apion said that this was his uncle, and didn't he rejoice every time he met him? Apion said that these are the sincere feelings towards him from His Highness. He added that this cannot happen and he does not believe in it. Suddenly, the monster Apion had seen earlier began to appear behind His Highness. Apion said, that means it is an evil spirit, and His Highness is not him. He added that when he sees him, His Highness becomes paralyzed with fear, and loses his authority. While swinging his katana, Apion said that he is not a real king. Meanwhile, Oklium ran with the monk in her arms to the entrance. Breathing heavily, she told him to be patient a little longer. Suddenly the door was hit with a red glow. She leaned away from the door along with the monk, and fell to the ground. She saw a red line forming around the door. Oklium said that the boundaries of sleep are becoming smaller and tighter, and this will continue until dawn. She tried to touch the boundaries again, but the boundaries hit her again. Suddenly, she was able to stretch her hand into the boundaries, and this time it worked. A single code appeared at the border around Oklium's outstretched hand. She removed her hand again, and said that everything was so intertwined, as if on purpose. And she added that only one person can return from here, from the very beginning. Meanwhile, the demon became furious and started screaming. The demon tried to attack Kim Sisipe again, but the guy tried to dodge. This time the demon hit, but already hit Sisipe several times. Kim Sisipe said that he knew that the words of the old sage were useless for a creature of amazing power. He added that he wished it was all a dream. He continued that he was already inside a dream, and nothing could be done about it. The enraged demon struck another powerful hit. Out of fear, Kim Sisipe froze in place, awaiting his death. But he noticed that Mrs. Oklium stood in front of him to protect Sisipe. Oklium said with great heaviness that she was fine. The demon left his sword and blue electric lines appeared from Oklium's body. The demon's katana hit some blue chips inside Oklium. The sword caused the chips to fall apart, and a bundle appeared in their place. The package depicted a landscape that Sisipe's father-in-law was looking at. Suddenly, the girl's eyes became blue and a blue portal opened on her chest, which began to draw everything into the world. Oklium said that this was the opening of the holy path, and the space began to tighten. The hole literally pulled the entire forest into one point on Oklium's chest. The monster's appearance began to disappear and the image of Apion became more clearly visible. Sisipe was surprised by this turn, because he did not expect that the demon was Apion. Evaporating from the face of the earth, Apion shouted the name Oklium, and flew up. The hole began to suck in the prince, and all the space around him. Oklium looked into Apion's eyes, for the last time with incredible calm. The black hole also quickly began to suck in the young monk. Okium asked Sisite to stay behind her back. Kim Sisite asked what is happening now, and what will happen to them. Okium replied that soon this whole place will dissolve between the past and the future, forever, and connect with other worlds. She continued that she could only save one thing, and she chose Kim Sisite. Okium added that only he will remain unharmed, but all the time that he met her in a dream, he will forget it all. Okium added that she could not protect Kim Sisite. Kim Sisite asked if the lady would disappear, to which she replied that she would disappear for a while. Kim Sisite added that he saw her so many times in his dreams, and was finally able to meet her, but he doesn't even know her name. Kim Sisite told her to tell him her name. Okium said that someday, under different circumstances, at another time, and in another place. Finally, she added that fate would bring them together. Someone woke up Kim Sisite and ordered him to come to his senses. The guy in uniform asked Kim, how can you stand like that and just pass out? Kim Sisite replied that he has been sleeping restlessly lately, and this is not surprising. The guy in uniform started beating Kim Sisite and saying that these were his dreams again. The guy angrily began to enter the building and told him that at least today, he should not be so absent-minded. Suddenly, some news about the return of the painting attracted their attention. The journalist said that after more than 2,000 years, all the conditions have been discussed, and she is finally returning to her homeland. The journalist also added that today the return painting will arrive at the National Capital Museum. The girl told the captain that the command had come to move to the observation point. Already standing in place, the captain put his hand on the shoulder of the yawning Sisite and called his name. The captain told him that even with all the salaries of all the police officers, he could not buy even an edge of this picture. He added that he was simply reminding Kim Sisite not to relax and not yearn. Suddenly, they noticed that some girl was running too suspiciously. Behind her tail there were 3 more guys in black, who were trying to catch up with the girl. Kim asked the captain that it seemed like an emergency. The captain ordered them to stand, and told Kim Sisite to keep an eye on them. The girl who ran turned out to be Okium turning her head. Kim Sisite was surprised, as if he saw something familiar. The captain got through and said that if there are free people, then let them send them. Kim Sisite had already run, but the captain ordered him to stay put. Okium ran into a back alley, while continuing to run away from the guys. She stopped when she saw another guy in front of her. The girl pressed herself against the wall, was surrounded on all sides, and ordered to stand still. Suddenly, they all turned their heads and someone ordered everyone to stand. While running, Kim Sisite shouted that it was the police, pulling out a gun. Kim Sisite continued, so that no one moves, and everyone remains where they are. Suddenly, Sisite's face filled with brightness at the moment. A car hit a guy at high speed, throwing him up. The girl got angry and hit one of the guys. Okium took advantage of the chance, and continued to run away from the guys. Suddenly she stopped in confusion near Kim Sisite, and wanted to help him. Suddenly, the guys decided to continue chasing Okium. A little later, the captain began to tell him to come to his senses, and the guy who was in the car began to apologize. Kim Sisite woke up, and said he was fine, and didn't need help. The captain ordered the girl to immediately call an ambulance. Kim Sisite also asked why they call him with this strange name. Sisite asked himself, again, if this was really his name. What if someone tells Kim Sisite again to come to his senses? The guy in uniform asked Kim, how can you stand like that and just pass out? Kim Sisite replied that he was fine and asked why they called him such a strange name. Suddenly, Kim Sisite woke up at home, lying exhausted in bed. After a moment, he stood up and went into another room to wash himself. Suddenly, he heard strange screams coming from the street. He went out into the courtyard, and saw 2 monks near the monk, and shaking him, so that he would wake up. Sisite approached them, and the monk said that at dawn he found him lying here, and he did not come to his senses. He also added that the monk was so excited about meeting his mother today. He also continued that Kim Sisayat cared so much about him, and said that he loved him like a brother. But why does he have such an indifferent face? Kim Sisayat replied that he did not know this young monk. He also continued that it was a pity that this was a boy, but he didn't know him, and he thought there was some kind of misunderstanding. They asked him how he didn't know him, and what he was talking about. In the evening, a group of soldiers were looking for someone in the forest with torches in their hands. One of them found Prince Apurng, who did not move near the tree. He shouted to everyone that the prince was here, and they finally found him. They asked His Highness if he was okay, to which there was no answer. It had only been a few months since King Tanjong had ascended the throne, but the whole world was already filled with anxiety. Someone said that the king's uncles did not become a reliable support for him. The unknown person added that for Tanjong his uncles were more of a danger than a support. The other continued to defend His Highness the King. Someone continued that it was necessary to suppress relatives who pose a threat to the royal throne. The stranger added that there were rumors that even the secret authority of the royal court intervened in the fight. Someone also went on to say that Prince Suyang was considered the most dangerous among all the king's uncles, and at the moment when the fighting became fierce. The man added that Suyang suddenly became seriously ill and had been in bed for more than 10 days. The unknown person also continued that there were disturbing rumors among the people, that he had been poisoned, or that he was cursed. Someone added that there was even a rumor that heaven knew about the prince's treachery, and punished him. Meanwhile, Suyang was fast asleep in his soft bed. But he opened his eye and it suddenly began to look like the eyes of a dragon. A seal formed around the guy, and he shouted, and rose from the bed. Getting up, his eyes saw the meat that stood to the right of Suyang. Prince Suyang began to devour the meat with particular cruelty, as if he was not eating meat. Someone suddenly told him that he had already arrived, and this was a royal meal. Suyang, seeing someone, changed his look from crazy to calmer. Suyang asked if he called him here again, and the guy replied that everything was correct. The guy also added that it was time to pay a visit to the king, and he can do with it as he wants. Suyang changed one eye to a dragon one, and said that he also smells like that place. Having changed his appearance to a more creepy one, the guy replied that it was so. A little later, Prince Suyang suddenly appeared in full health after a long time. And he gathered many subordinates, including even Han Myung-hee. And he began to do cruel and ruthless acts incomparable to those of the past. And the scientist Kim Sisayp continued to live a routine life, and still could not sleep normally. Kim Sisayp hoped that he could somehow fall asleep, and added that only by knowing the limit will you find peace. He continued that only when you are calm will you be able to think. He also added that only then will he gain the ability to think. And after he can manage his thoughts carefully and in detail. Closing his eyes, he said that only then would he get a place where he could stay. A moment later, someone told Kim to stop and put the painting down. Kim held a package in his hands with the word sleepwalking written on it. The captain, pointing a gun at him, asked Kim Sisayp to come to his senses, and asked what he was going to do with the painting. The captain repeated for Sisayp to calm down and put the picture down, to which Sisayp asked what was happening here. Suddenly the bridge exploded, the bridge behind Sisayp, and they both stood in bewilderment. The captain shouted and asked what else this was, and Sisayp turned his head in bewilderment. Sisayp decided to apologize to the captain, to which he stood in complete shock. After Sisayp's words, a smoke grenade rolled up to the captain's feet. Sisayp ran away and said that he was really sorry, while holding the painting in his hands. Other police officers who were on the bridge opened fire on Sisayp. Suddenly, something nearby exploded because their car turned over along with the police. Sisayp noticed how suddenly someone's shadows stood behind the smoke one. As the smoke cleared, it became clear that these were the same guys in black suits. Taking out a pistol from his pocket, Sisayp shouted to them that they were monsters. Without even thinking, Sisike opened fire on the guys without a drop of regret. The bullets reached the guys and they seemed to lean back from such shots. But after the shot they did not fall and continued to walk towards Sisike. Their bodies began to change their appearance to something not similar to a person. As a result, the guys turned into metal robots that are ready to destroy everything in their path. Out of anger, Sisike began shooting at the robots, hoping to destroy them. But every Sisike cartridge bounced off the metal robot. They continued to attack Sisike with complete cold-bloodedness. While Sisike was trying to deal with the cartridges, the robots had almost reached Sisike. One of them was already too close, and extended his hand to Sisike. Suddenly, someone appeared on the battlefield, to which the robot stood in a stupor. A few seconds later, the robot fell with many wires torn from it. Someone's female feet landed on top of the car making a loud sound. Suddenly, other robots and Sisike noticed this out of shock. In front of them stood someone in a mask with a katana in her hands, looking straight at them. Sisike, in bewilderment, asked out loud to himself if it was a girl. The girl, without saying anything, rushed towards the robots. With one swing of her sword, she destroyed a large robot, dividing it in half. The second robot, without even thinking, attacked the girl with a scream, for which he was also defeated with one precise blow from the girl. Having destroyed all the robots, the girl muttered something unintelligible. The girl muttered something incomprehensible again, and Sisike asked her to repeat it. He approached her and asked her if she was the same girl who was running away from the guys. Turning his head, a rooster appeared from under the hood. Kim Sisike woke up and said that at this rate he would go crazy, and asked himself what kind of girl and place from his dreams he was. Suddenly a rooster began to crow, which apparently woke up Sisike. Sisike got very angry and blamed it all on the rooster for not being able to sleep. After a moment, he started looking for the rooster everywhere, but could not find it anywhere. He climbed onto the fence and continued that where could this stupid rooster run away? He asked himself whose rooster it could be, and why it crows until dawn. Sisike also shouted out that he would catch him again, and show the rooster and his owner where the crayfish spend the winter. Sisike, realizing that the search would be useless, decided to stop with the capture of the rooster. In the morning, Sisike's father, mother, and a servant in a white bandage came to see Sisike. Sisike's mother asked the servant in a white bandage to take the backpack to the kitchen. The father began shouting Sisike's name, and asking if he was sleeping. Suddenly Sisike jumped out of the house, and said that he was a little carried away by the book. Sisike invited his father to sit down at his house and have breakfast. Sisike began to make excuses for the mess in front of them, saying that yesterday he studied literacy until late at night. His father told him to do it in daylight, and said it was a waste of energy if he went to sleep so late. The father continued that Sisike was very smart as a child, but when he grew up he became a pitiful person. Out of anger, the father said that even in the family of matchmakers they say that he lives separately from the family, even after the wedding. With shame on his face, Sisike began to say that in fact he. Meanwhile, suddenly the guy in the white bandage heard cries about some kind of rooster from Sisike's father. The guy in the headband asked himself why they were suddenly talking about roosters, and added that rabbits were much cuter. The guy looked at the roof, and said that they hung it there too. He added that this network is used in tiger attacks. The servant also continued that the only house not hung with a net is the young master's house. He asked himself that perhaps he should go to the market and buy him some nets. Looking to the side, he noticed the creature that used to be near the nets. Suddenly the servant fell and began to scream, and the dog attacked him, and began to bark at him. Some old man called his dog Hesby away, and told him not to jump on people. The dog stopped and looked kindly at the lying servant. The servant, laughing, asked the dog to stop, and asked him to get off him. The dog started licking the guy, and the guy started begging him that he shouldn't do that. The old man said that enough was enough, because intense and repetitive sounds make dogs anxious. The old man added that recently tigers began to attack even people's houses, so he took one puppy. The servant asked if a simple dog could resist a tiger. The old man confidently replied that he could, and when the tiger came, he would lure him and woo him with hespi, and then he would leave him alone. The guy asked, "Do roosters often crow here at night?" The old man replied that if roosters crowed here at night, he would have caught one of them long ago. The old man continued that all the chickens and cows here were taken by Mr. Xiang's tiger hunters. Previously, hunters were in the village taking away a cow, and the farmer was shouting and saying that how would they farm without cows? The hunter replied that if there was such an animal in the house, the tiger would smell it and come to him. The farmer fell helplessly from hopelessness, and his wife ran up to calm him down. The old man continued that he had to suffer to hide the hespi in this chaos, and he diligently taught him the command to wait. The servant asked that if there are no animals in the house, does it mean that they do not touch people, and added that if he bites a person, he will eat him completely. The old man replied that he was grateful that Mr. Suyang had gathered many people to catch the tigers. The guy added that he doesn't think it's that easy to catch tigers. The guy added that the house of the rich Choi family was guarded, and he was afraid of Suyang, but Suyang left everything to him, thereby putting his life at risk. He added that tigers are so fast that you won't even notice, and they are capable of chewing and breaking a human head. The old man asked Husby if he could protect Daddy, and the guy said that he seemed very scared. Suddenly an angry father came out of the house and said that the rooster was at Sisipes, and added sarcastically that it was incredible. The old man dragged Husby in his arms and said that it was time for them to go home now. The father came down angrily and the guy told him to be careful, but the father only replied that he was fine. Sisipes' mother said that they need to have a serious talk,